Committee of the Whole for Wednesday, May 6th. Please rise for a moment of invocation by Bishop Debnan, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
God of our universe, we come and petition you for the presence of this great assembly. We ask now that you invoke us with your love that only you can give and the wisdom that only you can give. We pray for this great borough called Pottstown and the leaders that you have set among us. We ask now that the cohesiveness of your mercy and greatness and kindness will be shed abroad in each heart that is assembled here. We salute you for your love and caring for us. Now as the government move forward that you have set in place, we decrease that you might increase for the wisdom and the courage to do what is right for this great state and to this great country of America. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, a little bit of housekeeping, and then we're going to move to the Police Officer of the Year presentation. We have 4 additions added to the agenda. The first one is the continued service of Dave Woglam as our Consolidation Committee consultant. The second one is the rescinding of the funding letter. The third is the different venue for the Elks Beer Garden that was we approved last month. They want to now move it to Memorial Park, so we'll have discussion on that. And the fourth is a vote of the CARES project. So those will all be added at the end of the meeting before comments from citizens present. So comments, the citizen can certainly comment on any of those items. Okay, now we're going to jump to agenda item number 5, which is the presentation of the Officer of the Year. I guess Chief Drumheller, that's you, and the Mayor.
Okay. As the Chief and the Captain are coming forward, I would just like to say how very proud I am to be a part of what is happening here in Pottstown. And regarding the application of police service, you know, it's a delicate balance when you're dealing with those who break the law. And in some cases, you're dealing with issues that really don't involve the law, but however, our officers are always in position to detail the community in the ways that it's accustomed to make sure that the quality of life in the areas that they're attending to remains consistent. And I'm also very proud to say that over 2 tenures of serving as mayor, there's really been very few disciplinary actions within the police department. There's been almost negligible times where there was such foreboding interactions with the community that the level of safety was eroded to such a point where we were in such dire straits that, you know, the artillery had to come. So that's something that we can be proud of and that we can definitely pray that it will continue, and that it only continues by each person taking safety and accountability, which, you know, this is like a preaching to the choir statement. However, I drum it up to everyone from the high to the low end of the bar whenever I have the opportunity. It takes each of us to keep each of us safe at the end of the day. So, thank you.
Tonight I'd like to introduce the Police Officer of the Year for 2014, for the calendar year of 2014. We're always a year behind. And I'd like to take the opportunity before she comes up and accept her award to say a few words about her. One of the jobs that she does is one of the toughest there are in police work, and that's handling crimes that involve children and involves sexual activity and illegal business. So one of the things that I know for a fact, because I in fact did that, it takes a toll on your life. It takes, because you're afraid that if you lose a case, you've allowed a child to get hurt. That type of dedication and that type of wonderful work that she does is impressive, and that itself should be commended for what she did. But through her efforts, through her dedication, through her professionalism, she has provided Pottstown a platform to assist with missing kids, children and youth services, and an incredible amount of work that she does. She never complains when she gets phone calls at night, and quite frankly, it's on her own time. And she will come in at the drop of a hat to assist this borough. She is the epitome of a dedicated police officer, a professional police officer, and I am proud that she's a Pottstown police officer. Tonight, I introduce to you the Police Officer of the Year, Detective Heather Long.
Afternoon and working as a mediator. This was the case that you were working on, and the person said to me, she's tough, but I realized that she has to be. So that's the delicate balance. When the community realizes that in doing your job, that you're not there to make a delicate balance of their issue, but to keep things the way they need to be. So thank you for giving her that reality and for her to make that statement to me as well. This is a commendation for Police Officer of the Year, Detective Heather Long. In 2014, Detective Heather Long has proven to be an asset to the Pottstown Police Department and the Detective Division. She is an aggressive, dedicated, and persistent detective. Detective Long is very knowledgeable in her field of expertise as the juvenile detective. She often provides assistance to other officers by sharing her knowledge, guidance, and expertise with them to assist in their own cases. Detective Long goes above and beyond her assigned duty by often providing this assistance while off duty or at inconvenient hours. She selflessly and without hesitation will assist other detectives in their investigations while placing her own investigations on hold. Detective Heather Long has played an instrumental role in building strong departmental relationships with agencies, such as the Office of Children and Youth and Mission Kids. As a credit to herself and the Pottstown Police Department, she has developed into one of the premier forensic child interviewers in Montgomery County. She is often sought by Mission Kids, the Montgomery County DA's office, as well as other police agencies to conduct child interviews. In 2014, Detective Long was out of work due to an injury. Despite being out for 2 months, she still managed to close over 160 cases. Of those cases, Detective Long cleared 70% by arrest, service clearance, or located person and juvenile. 4 of her 2 arrest cases were for rape. The majority of her cases were her high-profile crimes, such as sexual assault, that were committed against children. Many of Detective Long's cases involve multiple interviews, extensive evidence gathering, and tireless court and victim preparation. Detective Long completes these tasks with passion and dedication. The actions and commitment of Detective Heather Long bring honor to herself, the Pottstown Police Department, and the community in which she serves.
Okay, continuing with our agenda, we have infrastructure, our subcommittee reports versus infrastructure. Councilor Culp, I know the minutes are attached. Anything you want to add?
And Cheryl would like to add a couple of things. All right, we have 2 things. One, Councilor Proxel and I discussed and agreed to recommend to council to allow for substitution of blacktop, flexi-pave, or a similar approved product for use on tree surrounds. Policy to be reviewed by our solicitor.
This would be addition to the other items that are allowed by the borough, correct?
Correct, so we would just be adding the flexi-pave or
As an
another.
alternative.
Or an approved, yes.
Would you want that added to,
Yes.
I mean, are you guys ready to move forward with it, or?
We've been working on this since
I would
November.
say most likely, yes.
All right, if they're ready, we'll have it listed for Monday.
Okay, and then the other item was not at Codes and Infrastructure meeting. It's fitting tonight that was about community. Recently, I was speaking with my friend Johnny Corson, and we were talking about the social and cultural importance of strengthening the connection of people and places that they share. And he began telling me about all the wonderful things that New Style Maribel stood for. And he said he always introduced himself as New Style Maribel from the great town of Pottstown. And he did it with conviction and pride. And New Style dedicated his life to advocating for all people, serving as the president of the Pottstown NAACP chapter for 30 years. In honor of his memory, I'd like to propose to council the renaming of or dedication of Chestnut Street Park to New Style Maribel with input from his wife and his family, of course.
Not that I disagree, and I think he deserves the honor. Is there anything in the boroughs with policies or anything on doing such that you're aware of?
Not to my knowledge, sir. Since the plaza out here has got a name to it.
I didn't know if there was anything we had in the past. Do you know of anything?
Park, the amphitheater there.
Would you want this done in June, since Monday's a little too quickly to have a family come and so forth?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We'll have it listed for June. Anything else?
That's it for me.
Economic Development and Business Liaison, Erica?
Well, we had a very busy weekend in Pottstown this past weekend, and here we go. And I just put up a few slides that we captured thanks to the Pottstown Municipal Airport and having an aeronautical opportunity to take some photos of the goat races here, so you can see, and if you were there, thousands of people came into Pottstown that day. In addition to that, you have on Saturday the May Fair, the powwow, the car show. It was just a sight to see and something to really enjoy. So I was really proud to see all of that and all the different connections. We had the part trolley on Saturday. We had every single part box and CMB services running shuttles all day on Sunday for the good races. Had to send in 9 more buses for all the people that were coming into Pottstown. I was listening as everybody came through talking about the carousel and the mini golf. The mini golf had some of the best days ever for, well, they've been here for, this new season, but they've said that they've enormous sales. So it just goes to show that the Trek District and all the things we're doing to support these local businesses and work together are working. And Slack Fox called us wildly successful to come to Pottstown. So right now, we're still working on the numbers on, how many actual people are coming in, but, you can just tell that this is an enormous step in the right direction. In addition to that, I did want to make note that the spring momentum has been published. It's available on our website and highlighting a lot of the different events and many other contributions. So please continue to pass on that good news. And we have a airport event, a community event coming up on Saturday the 16th, and it will benefit the 99s, the women's local pilots. So I have some information. I've left it with you, and Deb Penrod is our contact for that. She's been working very diligently on getting the community support around that, working with our FBO. So that will be coming up. And also on the Walk Bike Pottstown front, we held our first stakeholders meeting. We'll be holding a public participation meeting on May 28th right now at Connections on High, we're going to be inviting the community to hear about some of the design treatments that have been approved by PennDOT that we are working on. It's National Bike Month, so in the spirit of all that, part is staying busy, and we have our bike racks now being installed on the buses, so we're looking at a part bike and ride day in coordination with Bike Pottstown for Friday, May 22nd in Smith Family Plaza. So there's a lot happening. Happy to share it. Happy for you to get involved. So that's what I have to share this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, some of the unofficial estimates were between 10 and 12,000 people at the event. And they were saying last year that when it was held in Phoenixville, the max they could ever get was 4,000. That's all that area could hold and so forth. So it's, truly, us getting Sly Fox here is, has been a big boost. So there's people that have seen parts of Pottstown that they would have not seen if it wouldn't be for Sly Fox. So we thank Sly Fox.
Right. Thanks.
Okay, transportation, Councilor Cole?
We want to discuss the part.
Yes, we'll talk about the contract a little later for purchase transportation.
And also and we've discussed this last month, that the airport, they'll start the construction again on June 1st. And that's pretty much.
Not related to the transportation, but how's the construction going at the Borough Garage?
It's going well. Some soil issues, but it is going well. It's not packed tight enough.
Oh, okay. As long as it's not contamination.
It's not contamination, it's just soil packing.
Yeah.
No turtles. That we're aware of.
Ricketts Community Center,
I have something for Monday.
okay. And Pottstown School Board, Mr. Williams?
Not much today, so
Anything you want to talk about the powwow?
we had a great coming, we had a great weekend, the weather was fantastic, and, thanks to the support of the borough, I think we were a major success in that community, and it can only get better. Thank you.
Well, we thank you. Okay, the ad hoc zoning animal, Councilor Miller.
I'll do animal first, and actually Chuck is pending some information from me. I had the opportunity to sit down with Chief and address some questions that the committee had, and Chuck and address the questions the committee had, but it is all pending for me to submit to Chuck to review and then put into ordinance form, and then for my committee to review it one more time before we present it. The next zoning ad hoc meeting is going to be rescheduled for June 16th, unfortunately, and fortunately, our May meeting falls on Election Day, and then followed by Memorial Day. So we are going to reschedule for June 16th, and then I'll turn it over to Chuck where we are in progress.
Yeah, the committee's been pretty active, as you know, in looking to update and amend the zoning ordinance. For Monday night, the public hearing has been advertised, which you authorized prior months concerning the additional definitions to our zoning ordinance. So that'll be ready for this coming Monday. Last month, we discussed the special exception criteria for a number of uses, and that's in the pipeline now. So there'll be a public hearing for that round of changes in June. So that, I believe, is June 8th. And presently, the committee is looking at the information concerning no impact home occupation and what we call major impact home occupation as far as regulations. They haven't really been updated for a number of years, and so I think that's the next challenge the committee's taking on, and hopefully by your June meeting or your July meeting, we'll have a recommendation on that. So it's been a work in progress, but we're actually moving ahead with the changes, even though we're not able to put everything together at one time, and we felt it was better to keep everything moving rather than to wait till all was completed. Never usually gets completed.
Okay, anything else? Any questions? Bicentennial Committee, Councilor Cole?
Yes, we have some information on the time capsule.
Janice had contacted the Susquehanna Bank for approval, and at that time, there's information in our mail, but we will be responsible for getting the old capsule in and out, taking care of the property and all that. And Susquehanna said that this time they didn't have a problem, but I do think that they did say something about another business coming in, or?
Well, what their possibility, I guess they're going to be bought out by another bank, but the main thing is we need to have a member of understanding, which I think Chuck is going to help me on that.
Yes.
It's a work in progress.
So we all know, working on that, and I think everything as far as the bicentennial is pretty much in order right now. Everything that's going to go on is there for now, and I think everything will be done. All we need is more volunteers.
I was looking at the area where the time capsule is, and there is a concrete separation from the rest of the sidewalk. So it's not like the entire piece of sidewalk has to be taken out, just that area. It's like a 2-foot by 2-foot area and so forth. So I'm sure it was made to be removed as easily, and then, whatever, to reinter whatever is going to be interred. Okay, anything else? Any questions?
I have a question about Independence Day Limited and their request for use of the park for fireworks.
What's your question?
Should I pose it as a thought bubble? That are they going to be granted a permission to use the park? They're still fundraising. So let's leave it as ... So hopefully at June's meeting, if they have the money and the wherewithal to conduct a fireworks display, that they would get the approval they need to go forward.
Well, there is a process, and I don't know how long the fire marshal has to give approval for the fireworks and so forth, and the licensing, and I'm sure that's, it's not like it's something that hasn't been done in the past. And it's off the island, I guess, is where they send it off. So
I just wanted it out there in the universe that.
oh, it's out there.
There's a process that
I know.
has to be followed
I
as
understand.
dictated by the fire codes.
Okay.
But that's separate of the bicentennial committee. The 4th of July committee's independent of that.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Presentation by Mr. Bamford on LERTA.
Good evening. This evening I'm here to speak about LERTA, which is the Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Act. This is a topic that is not new to many of you. Mark Flanders and I had a discussion with Borough Council's Finance Committee. I guess that was probably back in March. And then subsequent to that, we've had a discussion on this topic with a couple committees of the school board. This is a tool that is available to municipalities throughout the Commonwealth to abate a portion of the tax increases or the increase in tax assessments that result from improvements to properties. LERTA is the enabling legislation that was passed by the state, I think, back in the 70s. There's a very similar piece of legislation with a different title, a different act that was also passed in the 70s that addresses residential properties. LERTA addresses commercial and industrial properties. The enabling legislation at the state level lets communities that adopt LERTA make some decisions as to what they want the program to look like. The enabling legislation provides for a tax abatement period not to exceed 10 years and gives the communities flexibility in what the schedule for the exemption looks like over that 10-year period. It also gives the municipalities and school districts the flexibility to establish a district or districts within a municipality, or in some cases, municipalities have chosen to include their entire municipality within the LERTA district. If Borough Council and the school board and the county commissioners would choose to go forward with the LERTA program, you would be required to hold at least one public hearing, and then Borough Council would need to adopt an ordinance. the school board would need to adopt the resolution, and the county commissioners would have to adopt a resolution to establish the program. All we're trying to accomplish here tonight is to broach the subject with Borough Council, perhaps get some feedback as to what level of interest there is, and if we believe there is sufficient interest on the part of Borough Council, Mark and I and other borough staff will get together with school district staff and roll up our sleeves and come up with some recommendations as to the types of buildings this could apply to, the areas within the borough, or alternatively the entire borough that we think this might be an effective tool within, and also some recommendation about the schedule for exemption. I've included in the slides tonight an example. As I said, the enabling legislation allows you to exempt the increase in assessed value over a period up to 10 years, according to whatever schedule you choose to adopt. This is an example that many communities choose to follow. Over a 10-year period, they will frequently exempt 100% of the increase in assessment due to improvements. In the second year, 90%, the third year, 80%, until at the end of the 10-year period, at the 11th year, you're not exempting anything. So what's attractive to many communities about this program is you're not being asked to forego any of the taxes you're currently collecting on a property. You're simply exempting a portion of the increase due to investment. So it's a true incentive to have property owners invest in their properties. I think I should also clarify what I mean by investment. It's significant investment. It's the type of investment that would result in an increase in assessment. For example, if you're simply replacing windows on a building.
Steve, can you pull the microphone in?
Sure. If you're simply replacing windows on a building or putting a new roof on a building, it's not likely to result in an increased real estate tax assessment. However, if you take a vacant piece of land, for example, and you build a new structure on it, you will certainly increase the assessed value of the property. And if you have this tool in place, rather than get hit over the head in year one with a huge increased tax bill, it's phased in over as much as a 10-year period. This is a hypothetical illustration, and this is my last slide. I don't have a huge slide deck here, but this is a hypothetical just to put some numbers on paper so you get a sense of exactly what we're talking about. In this hypothetical, we're talking about a property that has a current assessment of $200,000. Then a developer or investor improves the property and invests significantly, that results in an increase in market value of $1.5 million. As I think most of you are aware, assessed value is a function of market value. So if you apply the common level ratio, you end up with an additional assessment in this scenario of about $860,000. So if we had a LERTA program in place and with a 10-year exemption schedule, this is what the numbers would look like. In year one, you would continue to get taxes on the $200,000 original assessment. So in this scenario, as an example, I applied the current millage rate for the school district, the borough, and the county, and the total taxes generated in year one would be $10,543, which would be the same taxes you'd be getting if the improvements had not been made. $862,500, which is the additional assessment due to the improvements, would be completely exempt in year one. In year two, only 90% would be exempt. So you see the taxable column, the numbers going up. So over a 10-year period, the exempt column, the amount goes down, and the taxable column goes up by the same amount every year for 10 years. So when you get to the year 11, nothing is exempt, and the district, the borough, and the county, in this example, would get over $56,000 in taxes. Now that assumes no increase in millage, which of course is not likely, but just for illustration purposes and to keep it simple, that's what I did. Mark and I have been having this discussion with various committees. So far the feedback has been favorable to the extent that the committees are interested in exploring this further. Mark, I don't know if you want to jump in here and add anything.
I think it's important to note that Steve and I and Erica have met with various developers, in fact, recently, and one of the things that's been made clear to us is without the LERTA, there are two potential investors, who are not interested in investing in Pottstown. They made it clear if the LERTA was in place, they would begin the process of land development or coming up with a proposal and going to the Commission for Land Development in the very near future. So,
one of the things in our marketing efforts that one of the challenges we often face is our community is perceived as a high tax jurisdiction, and that's because our millage is high. It's the second highest combined millage in the county. Now, of course, our property values are low, but the fact that we're perceived as a high tax jurisdiction is a real detriment to attracting new investment. And this would be a tool that we'd have in our economic development toolbox to help us address it. I want to make clear it's certainly not a silver bullet. It's not going to be an incentive in every scenario, but it can be a very nice tool to apply in scenarios where investors and developers are looking at a significant investment, significant improvements, and they're concerned about what their tax bill is going to look like when it's all said and done.
at the end of the day, too, even if an investor would choose not to take advantage of it, for lack of a better description, I think there's a psychological aspect of it. The message being, Pottstown is interested in doing business. We have enough desire for people to come here that we're trying to do the best that we can do to offer the incentives. I think that's an important message to send.
Are there any questions or comments?
Questions by council.
Is there a minimum, like if somebody comes in to buy a piece of property in a business area, is there like a minimum that they paid for that they'd be able to not be able to use this LERTA? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, there are certain the enabling legislation provides certain parameters that we have to live by. So there is some flexibility. I believe you probably could establish a minimum investment amount, but I am not certain of that. And that's the details that staff really has to work out and get a handle on, and then come back to Borough Council, come back to the school board with some recommendations.
Now, would it be just say Circle of Progress, or say down by Bethlehem Steel or something like that, or is it like individual, like smaller businesses like within the town? It's
a district, and there's certain criteria within the legislation that we'd have to apply. It's very similar criteria to the criteria that's used when the Blighted Property Committee is looking at real estate. So there are criteria that we have to look at, and it's not individual properties, but areas. So we can choose to create a district, we can choose to create multiple districts, or we could choose to apply it to the entire municipality. The key is we have to apply the criteria, and we haven't taken a close look at that yet.
But as far as the entire municipality, it would just have to do with businesses. It wouldn't have to do with homeowners or anything like that.
It could be residential too. There's two different pieces of legislation. One addresses commercial and industrial properties. One addresses residential properties. So we can look at residential as well as commercial and industrial.
We've already had some preliminary discussions, and obviously it's going to be up to you and the school district and the county commissioners at the end of the day. But there's a perception in the group that have spoken about it already that it makes sense to do it borough-wide, and it makes, because you're then not picking and choosing any specific area. You're not leaving someone out that feels that they should be included. Right. And we also have discussed the reality that it makes sense to do the residential and the commercial aspect of it. But again, at the end of the day, that's ultimately going to be your decision.
Well, and I think as far as residential, that would really help as far as home sales also, because people aren't going to put the money into their homes if they feel that there's some kind of an incentive there. I think they'll put the money into their homes and maybe, give them a little more worth.
Yeah.
So
I think there's two things that I want to make sure everyone takes away from this presentation is one, it's only a relevant tool in situations where the investment is of the nature that it's going to increase the assessed
Right.
value of your property.
Right.
And the other thing I want to make sure you take away is we're not asking you to forego any tax revenue that you're currently receiving. This exemption schedule that I have up here would only apply to the increased in assessed value due to improvements.
And I think that's the problem with, when we talked with the KOZ,
Mhm.
that there was no, and that was the problem, there was no, the tax was gone that was originally coming from there.
Right.
Over a period
So there's
of years.
concern about that.
Steve, I got a two-part question, and first part, does the legislation of this include them being voided from getting their property reassessed during the 10 years that they're part of the LERTA? And secondly, can we, say, put in as part of the act too, as far as our own part, that you can't get your property reassessed, maybe 5 or 10 years after the LERTA is done and over with, because, we'd be back to break even, and that's certainly, we don't want to do that.
I honestly don't know the answer to that, and that's a good question.
Because I know, that's one thing my wife said, we got to do something as far as the properties in this town are being, we're getting killed by reassessments. And I don't know if there's anything we can do to put a moratorium on reassessment being done borough-wide, but it's just absolutely killing us.
Well, Steve, as I understand it, there's another difference between this and the Keystone Opportunity Zone program is that if we establish a district and an owner wants to take advantage of the program, it's not contingent upon any land transfer or attracting someone new coming in. An existing owner can also take advantage of the program, correct?
That's accurate. And related to that point is the incentive runs with the land or with the property. So if the property owner sells it, if we established a 10-year schedule and the property would be sold at some point, those benefits would also be available to the new owner on the same schedule.
To your point, Mr. Gary, typically, the LERTAs that we've reviewed, there's a timeline, the application occurs at or within 30 days of application for whatever it is to the Licensing and Inspections Department.
For a building permit, yeah.
For the building permit, whatever it is that the project is, whether it's a renovation, new construction. Right. So from that perspective, that's the trigger. It's not the transfer of the land.
Yeah, so that could be the existing owner.
That could be an existing property owner, or it could be a new
someone new
property.
coming in.
Correct.
And, the other Steve, I get your point and your concern about the assessment, but, even if we cannot prevent, and frankly, I'm not sure I'm in favor of preventing reassessments because that's a benefit that goes to the homeowner. Even if there's a reassessment, we're still coming out ahead because we're still getting a better improved property that's going to improve the overall look of the borough.
Now, as far as, I was just thinking of that property down on Queen Street where they're improving, they're fixing up the parking lot. Now, how would that work? Say this fella gets this all done and 2 months from now this goes into effect and he goes, well, geez, oh man, maybe I could have taken advantage of this. Is there any kind of...
As Mark indicated, it's typically, your application for tax abatement is typically tied to your application for a building permit, and you're given a defined window of time in which to apply. And if you don't apply within that window, you're out of luck.
Okay, so then he wouldn't be able to, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be able to be used. Okay.
So clearly, this would have to be something that would be coordinated with the codes department to make sure that when the procedure was in place, when anyone came in to pick up a building permit application, they were also given an application for LERTA.
And is it your understanding when someone makes an application, although there are criteria that must be met, is it pretty formulaic as opposed to subjective interpretation?
Yeah, it's pretty much an objective decision. Once this body and the school district and the county commissioners determine what we want this program to look like within the parameters established by the legislation, it's not difficult to apply.
And somebody making application should have a fairly good understanding of yeah, they're going to get approved because they've met the objective criteria.
Right. Where there is some gray area is people are never clear on what's going to happen to their assessment.
Sure.
There's a lot of uncertainty around that. You can make a substantial investment in property and not have your assessment go up to a great extent because the assessors view it as more along the lines of repairs and maintenance than improvements. So that's not a function of borough government, obviously. We don't. This body doesn't control that, but that's where there is a lot of uncertainty in people's minds. But this would give them some comfort, right? So they apply for LERTA, and it turns out they are, hit with a large reassessment.
Because if they're going to make the investment, and the concern is at the end of the day, if my property value goes up $860,000, I'm going to get whacked with taxes. So because that's an unknown, I'm going to withhold the investment. But if the worst case scenario is I make the investment, I'm not reassessed, and I stay where I'm at, there's still incentive to go forward with it.
Right.
And to answer one of Carol's concerns, that property owner that did that investment and he just missed the boat, well, he may decide to do another improvement knowing that he's going to get it, and he might have been holding off and move forward with it. So he may have been doing the small things first. So they still have a chance to catch that golden ring.
And with it being tied to a building permit, they have a specified amount of time that they're going to make those improvements.
Right.
I have a question about the two investors, not to know who they are, but are they job-creating entities or is it housing?
I would say definitely not housing, and yes, job creating.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes. If we were to adopt this in the KOZ right now, can we forego the KOZ benefits?
Although I'm not an attorney, I don't believe you can.
I'm going to weigh in, Chuck.
No, I think whatever your ordinance adopted for the period of time, you're stuck with that. I think you basically committed to that, and anyone that's in that has the vested rights to expect that you're going to have KOZ protection for whatever period of time it is.
And do we have an expiration date on our KOZ?
Oh,
Yes, it's 10 years.
it was 10 years, and we're into that at some point.
And it's only that one property.
Well, only one exercised the rights so far, but how long are we committed to that?
No,
That's
all the other
done.
properties expired. It was
Yeah.
just the former 84 Lumber Trust plant that was, the duration was extended.
So we could apply this to the remainder of the property?
Yes, we could.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Did we do it for the full 10 years?
He
I
did.
think it was.
That's
You
my
did.
recollection.
That's what we did.
Yeah, but it's just the one property.
Right.
Yeah. Also, Counselor, speaking to that KOZ property, we're trying to arrange to have the Langfords, the owners of that property, attend the next joint meeting of Borough Council and the school board to update those bodies on what's happened at that property. There's been a significant amount of investment and a significant amount of job creation associated with that property, and they're going to bring us up to speed.
Okay.
The residential portion, Steve, could that apply to just home ownership, or does it also apply to investment residential properties?
That question's been raised by other committee members that have been part of this discussion, and I believe there may be ways we can look at applying it to owner-occupied and not rental properties, but I don't know that with certainty as I sit here today. Obviously, we're going to have Chuck, the solicitor for the school district, the solicitor for the borough, take a look at the enabling legislation to make sure we're consistent with it.
And assuming you could do that, it'd be very difficult to monitor. You'd really need to have eyes and ears out if you provided that and someone decided to move out and turn into a rental.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, I'm not sure why we would not want to offer incentives for improvements to rental properties as well. I mean,
I wasn't thinking like house rental properties. I guess I was thinking about maybe an investor with a large apartment complex. Not that I want improvements to it, however, I think it would be benefiting tenfold because they have this property worth a lot of money and they're Am I thinking that there were?
I think at the end of the day, regardless of what the property owner is or what type of property it is, if there is a significant investment to improve the quality of that property, regardless of whether it's many multifamily or singular multifamily, it's a win for the borough.
Just that the rents would not increase with, obviously, because the property assessment wouldn't increase, so the rents wouldn't increase either.
Well, it'd be money in their pocket.
I'm not sure on that, because the ultimate goal is to improve the quality of properties in the borough, and ultimately improve the values, increase the values of the properties.
And increase the assessment.
And
Right.
through that process, regardless of what the owner is paying towards taxes, it increases their ability to collect higher rents.
Yeah, the more desirable it is to live in the borough, the more rent you can charge.
Mhm.
I mean, that,
So assessors look at various factors when they're putting a value on a property, but if, an investment property, a rental property, they're going to look at the income generated. So the higher end apartments with the higher market rents will end up larger assessments, larger assessed values, and a tool like this would actually incentivize people to build nicer apartments. So that level of detail is what staff really has to get an understanding of before we come back with some recommendations.
If we choose to adopt it, how would you spread the word to investors? I guess when they come to talk to you through paid or?
Yeah, I would obviously market it to be one of the few things we have available to us to differentiate us from other communities. But even if we didn't do a great job of marketing and promoting it, which would not be our intent, obviously, they would automatically learn of the program when they come in to talk to someone about a building permit. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm not totally clear on exactly at what point something like this would kick in. Is it more a numeric point?
I'm sorry?
Is it more of a numeric point where it would kick in, or is it more of a, as opposed to just someone saying, okay, a significant improvement? Is there a numeric value to something like this kicking in, or I'm not sure exactly what point it kicks in.
It could kick in theory, even if it was just a nominal increase in your assessment, although that's not much of an incentive. So the assessed value is being determined by the county assessor's office. So there's no way for us to know ahead of time with any certainty when a property is going to have an increase in assessment. But should it, as long as the person took advantage of the program and applied within the window of time that we create, typically it's 30 days or 60 days from when they apply for a building permit. As long as they took advantage, submitted an application within that window, and if once their project is complete, their assessment goes up, they'd be entitled to this tax relief.
So if the assessment goes up, that's the criteria, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that means the county is going to dictate when this kicks in. They're the ones who's going to make that determination.
They are, but they should do that. This should not be a factor into how they assess a property. This will be out there. They'll be aware of this will be out there because we want them to be a party to this. We want them to participate in the tax abatement. But the assessor should be completely
oblivious to this.
Yeah.
So on a case by case, if the improvements increase the assessment of the property, that's when this would kick in.
Correct.
All right.
So then the assessment is done immediately upon the improvement of the property? When does the assessment get done to determine that?
Well, anytime a developer pulls a permit from the borough, that information is sent to the county. I don't know as far as timing goes. Maybe
Janice, can you comment on that?
It usually takes, I'm going to say, at least a month to a month and a half. The county puts out a report every month, so till the building permit goes through and that process gets to the county and then it goes through their assessment office and it gets back on a report, it could be a month and a half to 2 months after the fact.
Following the improvement.
Right. Following the complete completion.
Right, I think the completion's the key, because if you were doing a large project, I mean, you may be in construction for 8 or 9 months. So the county's going to come out to assess pretty much when you're ready to occupy or it's deemed substantially completed. That's when the assessor would come out.
Does the county have to be a part of this, or?
Yes.
Sounds like they have to, yeah.
In the KOZ, they definitely had. All 3 taxing bodies had to participate. In this, I am not
Our
100%
solicitors
certain
said
that's the case.
I think they do, Steve, because
Okay.
they're a taxing body as well. So-
They are.
And typically, the county usually goes along with the local municipality's decision on all these types of things.
They have, and there are other LERTA districts locally, so this is not unprecedented, that the county follows the lead of the municipalities in the school district.
Any other questions? Okay, for Monday night, I guess you're looking for a vote from us to move forward?
To allow staff and the solicitor to move forward with the project. Come back to you with a recommendation.
Okay,
Thank you.
it'll be listed. Okay, now we have a presentation by Hanover Square, the commercial part of that project. Evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and ladies and gentlemen of Borough Council. My name is Chris Hogan. I'm attorney for Greg Lingo and Cornell Homes. Greg is with us this evening. He's sitting on the far end of the first row. As council may be aware, Cornell Homes stepped in to complete the residential development in a planned community known as Hanover Square at Hanover and Industrial. As council may also be aware, there is a parcel in Hanover Square that fronts on Hanover Street that was approved in 2006 for a 50,000 square foot office building, and it remains undeveloped by its current owner. Greg has that parcel under contract and is here tonight with an alternative idea for development of that parcel that he'd like to present to the council for review and consideration. With us this evening, in addition to Greg, is Tom Burley, to Greg's immediate right. Tom is the project manager at Hanover Square and would be the gentleman on the, with boots on the ground during the development. And then to Tom's right is Kevin Ember, engineer at McCarthy Engineering. So with the council's permission, we'd like to set up an easel with an engineering plan and some elevations for the council to consider. And I would turn things over to Greg for his presentation.
My name is Greg Lingo. As Chris mentioned, I'm the owner of Cornell Homes. This project was originally approved by a Wolfington entity, and it was the entire parcel here, the corner property, kind of this boomerang-shaped property is the property that we're speaking about this evening. My company was the first, essentially, home builder in the project, and initially the residential portion of the project was sold to a company called Right Land Development. Right Land Development, after the first 3 buildings were built by us, subsequently lost the property back to Susquehanna Bank. So we bought the remainder of the residential property from Susquehanna Bank. And that was over the last probably 3 or 4 years. This recently in this corner, given the investment that we've made in the project, we've always kind of been concerned about what was going to happen on the corner, knowing that what was approved there initially is not feasible in today's economic climate, as well as not feasible from a construction standpoint, because the building that was approved, this large boomerang-shaped commercial building, went over a sewer line easement that would have to be moved. So
If you could keep the mic, yeah, hold on to the mic that way, if you're going to be moving around so that the audience can hear you. Thank you.
okay. Yeah, so the corner property here, the way that it was approved, left essentially the entire corner built out by a commercial office building. And going through the middle of it here, we had to vacate one of our home sites, lot 1, because there's a sewer line that comes through here and it just was not feasible to move. So we're proposing as an alternative, we talked to Wolfington's and also had to talk to his bank as well to see if he could get a discount to sell the corner property here, knowing that he was going to be unable to build what he had originally intended to build there. So what we would like to propose, one of the, kind of the foresight of your board a decade ago into how this project would go was, it was really great by kind of forcing the brick facades along the main streets. As the economy kind of went really into turmoil, it was the worst housing recession since the Great Depression. Even though things were changing, this community still looks good and strong because of the kind of the brick facades and everything that was approved. So it kind of forced the builder, which was us, and I think it's great, but it forced us to maintain a certain level of quality in that federal colonial architectural style, which is great. So, and again, for that reason, we've been concerned with what would be built here on the corner. So our proposal is to continue what we've built on Industrial Highway here, which was these 3-story townhomes, and build another row of 6 of them adjacent to my current building that's standing. And then on the corner here, we wanted to really highlight that you're entering the Borough, entering Pottstown. So on the corner, we wanted to put some kind of entry monumentation to the Borough, and we'll certainly work with the Borough on what that would look like and illumination. And then behind that, we'd like to build, this is a combination, and we met with staff last month to discuss some different options, and from that meeting, we really developed what I think is a better plan with the input that we had from everyone. We were talking about how Eagle View has some situations where there's offices below areas where people live. So our thought process here was this first floor was going to be essentially retail and or offices with housing above. And on the corner, particularly this end unit, so as you're driving in, we were going to have some open space going across the sewer easement that's already there. So it'll give you a good kind of view shed. This corner property, we've talked about possibly doing some type of a coffee shop or something so that it would spill out into a little patio here. The tough thing with the commercial project that was initially intended to be built here, there just is not enough parking for that big office building, even if there was a market for it. As people are coming in and looking at this new project, they're going to see that there's the ability to do some parking. We're taking the lot number 1 that we lost up here, and we're turning that into some additional parking spots. So then as you work your way around the corner, this building here, and you'll see it in your packet, is going to have retail, again, with apartments above was what our intention is. That would be the 3rd page in the packet there. And we're trying to continue with the same architectural facades as we work our way around the corner. What kind of questions could I answer or any of our professionals that are here?
How many apartments are you looking to add?
Well, we're looking here, this is going to be the 2nd and 3rd floor would have a total of, we haven't designed the building yet, but we were considering about 8 apartments on this building, and then on top of these buildings, probably 2 on each on top of these. So total maybe perhaps 16 in that range.
Is there a possibility for, instead of maybe apartments, like condominiums that people would buy and would have ownership of?
Yeah, I don't know the distinction in ownership at this point or use. Maybe Chuck, you could answer if it's the same.
Yeah, there's no difference per our ordinance. It's just a question. You could buy them if they wanted to condo them, or they could be rentals. And again, you can buy a condo and rent it out, so I'm not necessarily sure it makes a big difference, but I think it would really be the number of units, no matter how you wanted to, what you want to call it.
What is the square footage on the 4, like in the gateway area?
Here?
Yes.
These are going to be, they're 22 feet wide, each of them by 48 feet deep. In contrast to the homes that we built here are 20 feet wide by, some of them are as deep as 38 feet, but 30 to 38 feet deep. So they're a little bit deeper, and that gives us the ability to put some kind of offices there, or, they do not have a garage, so there'll be parking outside, whereas these homes that we've built have parking, integral parking part of the house. Did I answer your question?
Are they over 2,000 square feet?
Inside?
Correct.
They're not for each unit is not.
No?
Correct. You have to combine units for that size.
For the building adjacent to South Street, the larger portion, would you fairly closely adhere to this design with the corbelling of the bricks and then all the details of the arched windows?
Yeah, that's our goal is to really make it consistent with the facades that we've already built here along Industrial.
There seemed to be a little more detail in that particular building than some of the others. But
Yeah, I think we'd need a little bit more detail in it.
yeah, I think that would work well. Mhm.
Tom and I were reviewing the time frame today. We would hope to be kind of working our way around end of the year into the spring of next year for construction. There is some amount of site work that has to be completed here. And that's one of the things that under the current ownership, we've gone onto their property and we've planted some trees and we've tried to make it look nicer, but really none of that property was ours to do that. So after beautifying it, we then signed a lease to make sure that the current owner knew that we were going to take care of the stuff that we put there. If this doesn't get done, there's a fair amount of infrastructure work that I don't know when and if it gets done.
What size apartments, I'm sorry, what size will the apartments be as far as bedrooms amounts?
We really don't have that totally planned yet. Right now, we're looking at kind of each floor. Chris, do you have specifics there?
It looks like from the plan, the second and third floors would be about 4,700 square feet.
So between corridors and hallway and stairs, probably about 1,000 square feet per apartment.
So 4 per level?
Correct.
And you'll be the property manager of these apartments then?
Correct.
Cornell. Going back to 10 years ago when, Dan, you were on the planning and so was I, the original project called for, the retail that Mr. Wolfington was going to do. And where he was gaining the parking was across the street. The borough was going to, I think we were going to lease that to him
Or at least allow them to use the Hess lot.
Right, the Hess lot, for the parking and so forth on that. The other thing too, and I'm not sure, but I think you may be required, at least the other homes, the existing deed restriction called for brick on both the ends as you come in from the Hanover Street.
Right, yeah, and we're planning on.
Well, I'm looking at the pictures there and I see clapboards on the,
Second and third floor.
right, the second and third floor.
Yeah,
there.
this should have, on the sides, you mean? Yeah, it should have brick.
Yeah, well, that should be brick in the
Yeah.
same way with that retail building, with the apartments.
Correct.
One, that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this project, when it received the approval of council, was probably at the height of the real estate market in 2006. And Steve and Dan were on council at the time, so they will recall that the developer at that point made a significant amount of promises, and again, with not unusual, I would say. But there was always some concern, I think, from council, or at least I had some concern about whether that commercial building at the corner would ever be built, or would it be viable based upon the size and the lack of parking. And at this point, when the project was approved, that corner piece was basically split off, and the townhomes were built. The entire project was based upon the entire Smith Pie site, because if you recall, across the street, across South Street, there were other buildings that were already occupied. So when council approved the conditional use, there was a breakdown of the different use types and square footage to satisfy the ordinance. And all that was put in place to make sure that something got built more than a residential project. Obviously, shortly after this got approved, the market went down significantly. And I suspect, based upon working with Wolfington, the prior development, we really have no chances of doing anything with that corner realistically with respect to what was approved. Back in 2006, the way the market was, moving that sewer line, that was not a problem because the money was flowing, and that was going to happen as part of the deal. And of course, at this point, nobody's lending that kind of money to do. So again, not saying this is something you want to approve or want to allow them to move forward, but realistically, we don't see much happening with that corner. So probably for the foreseeable future, I think it's going to be vacant unless, someone's able to come up with a plan that satisfies council. I think that's what you're trying to do with where we are.
And the big issue is that sewer main coming down through the property. I mean,
From a construction standpoint, that's the big issue, but the original office concept, in addition to a lot of what Steve talked about earlier with cost of officing here, work has changed. A lot of companies, they don't work on Fridays. A lot of companies are encouraging their employees to work from home. And that trend is continuing all throughout the metropolitan Philadelphia area, not just here. So the market for constructing new out-of-the-ground office buildings is very different than it was 9 years ago.
And it wouldn't be unusual for somebody to live upstairs and work downstairs.
That'd be correct.
According to how you have been able to sell or the housing next to that, how confident are you as far as being able to rent out these apartments above these retail spaces?
We feel pretty good about it. This is a really desirable place to be on. If anything else, just proximity to 422 and ease to get to the major employment areas. It's and people desire or prefer new, and I really think that this will be, we'll be able to, as we talked about, as you improve things, you'll be able to charge more and get more for it because it's a better product.
And how would you assess your ability to sell the other properties on
a lot changed. The first lot that we bought in here in this community from the Right Land Group, we paid $70-some thousand per lot. The builder before us that was going to buy from them was going to buy it for $90,000 a lot. At the end, when we bought the lots from Susquehanna Bank, we bought them for $20,000, and we probably paid too much. So it's really just. So if I was to say, how would I assess how we've performed there? Yeah, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle. We thought for sure that we would have done much better. We've been here way longer than we expected initially in pro-forming, but we're committed to finishing it out. And we have homeowners here that would like to see something done as well.
Great. Eric, a question for you. The gateway, the connections gateway, is any of this as far as involving with this corner?
As far as the connections project, that is tied into closed loop as far as the right-of-way acquisition, and that will be the street lighting, the road diet, and the bike lanes, as well as the connection with the Schuylkill River Trail that's going to be on Industrial Highway. It could only complement this type of project. So I don't see any real issues with this proposal.
No, I didn't know if anything was involved with that corner as far as part of the grant.
No, I don't.
Okay.
We could take a look at it for sure and see if there's any issues or, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say issues, but maybe something you could save money on if grant money's available to do some of the work, especially the signage or whatever, that may have been included.
I only think it's wayfinding signage as you enter the borough and you exit into Chester County. So.
Any other questions? Okay, so for Monday evening, what we will do is have this listed as far as council giving basic okay of the concept. They'll still have to go through the planning commission, the whole deal, and then this come back to us to be voted on for the finalization. So.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Okay, lease amendment, 152 East High Street. That's you, Chuck?
Sure. This is the Fidelity Bank building, and we learned that it recently has changed owners. And if you recall, the borough leases a number of spaces in the Reading lot to that building. It's a long-term lease established in 2002, and this is really just an assignment of those lease rights and the parking spaces to the new owner. So there's a document that's been approved by the bank, approved by the new owner. 860 Lancaster LP, I believe, is the entity that bought the building. And so, again, they want to ensure that they have the right to use those spaces so they can utilize the building to its fullest.
Any questions?
And because the transaction occurred April 30th, so they've already had the building, they would prefer, if possible, council act to approve the lease assignment this evening rather than wait till Monday. So it's up to you.
We will add that to number after the vote for the CARES project. Okay, next is licensing and inspections department projects update.
Thank you, Mr. Trone. I want to brief council on 4 topics involving the licensing and inspections department. First of all, as you're all most likely aware by now, we're going to be asking you to approve proposed changes to the rental ordinance at the June council meeting, along with the associated fees. And rather than me trying to recite it all, I'm going to ask Mr. Place to brief council on what that's going to look like.
Good evening. As it was stated, we went into revisit to look at a biannual.
Pull the mic in close to you.
I don't speak up loud enough to begin with.
No, I'm getting already high signs from the back.
We were asked to look at doing a biannual rental inspection program. We've came up with a procedure for that. We do have a ordinance that's being presented. And tonight I'm just going to give a quick presentation on the procedures for how people would apply for a residential rental license. As long as I get this right. Residential rental license applications will be mailed out basically the first week of July of 2015. All owners of the residential properties will initially be required to submit a completed residential license application to the Borough to the department by September 1st of 2015. In the first cycle, it will be a 30-month trial versus 24. So it gives us a little bit of time to get this set up with getting the first round of notices out. With every residential application, it's going to be accompanied with a $10 fee per unit. Upon submission of the residential rental license, the application and associated fee, the applicant will receive a receipt for that. Within the first 30 months of the program, July 1, 2015 through December 31st of 2017, the rental units will get inspected, and it's going to be based on the biannual every other year. But in that first 30 months, we're still going to do change of tenancy. Now, when we get down towards the last couple months, we're going to use common sense through standard SOPs put in place in the department. If we do an inspection, 1 month before the end of the cycle, because of change of tenancy, we'll try and adjust that. But all inspections are going to be based on geographic locations. We have 8 different zones set up and split out pretty much evenly. What will happen is once the rental application is put in, we in turn will send an invoice out based on the location where the properties are at. And it will be based on the different locations. Of course, the first one will be for the first zone. We'll send notice out prior to stating to the property owner that you're going to be required to fill out the application for a rental inspection. Actually, your property's been listed for a rental inspection, and we're going to set up a date. There is a fee associated to that. Once the invoice, we're going to send an invoice out. It comes back. Once it's paid, that's when we send out notice for the inspections. And on the back of that, there'll be further instructions letting you know that if you cannot make the appointment that's scheduled for you, we will work with you to go through that and make changes. Based on the inspection results, if the structure is in compliance at that point in time, that's when we will issue the license. But it would be for the biannual period. After the initial period, starting January 1, 2018, of course, will strictly be on a biannual basis only, where you'll be slated in the same time frame that you were in the original cycle. So that will be continual from then on, depending on the geographic locations. The only thing that's still going to be required is upon change of tenancy, you're going to need to submit a change of tenancy form for the tenants. Scheduling and invoicing will still remain the same as within the first cycle. Basically, we kept the fee schedule as presented originally. Originally, single-family units were going to be $80. What we're doing is the $10 up front with the license application, and then $70 per unit. If you have an apartment building with at least 3, but no more than 6, it's $50 per unit. If you have 7 or more, it's $30 per unit. That initial inspection fee that you are paying out also comes with one follow-up. So if there was a problem during the original inspection, we do a follow-up at no additional cost. But if we have to come back a third time, or as it says here, a second time, then we do $40 per unit. And we're looking at also a possible $50 per unit missed inspection fee. So if you have an inspection in your schedule, we go out, nobody shows up, we have the ability to charge them $50 per unit. And basically, that's the gist of it. Any questions?
You still have, I'm sorry.
You talked initially when we questioned the original proposal about starting with the non-compliant properties that were identified. And so are you still planning on doing that by zone or?
We have actually targeted quite a few of the non-compliant properties already. Original numbers fluctuated between 4,800 units and I think 52, and on one study was based at 56. The latest calculations based off of all the information, we have 5,411 rental units out there, plus an additional 450-some short-term units. They've all been identified. That's what this original notification is going out. If they're not registered, they're going to be required to register. At that point in time, we're also putting them within the cycle. So we've identified every single property possible.
So will they be thrown into just the regular cycle by zone?
They're going to be put in the regular cycle by zone. Now, if it's an initial registration, they get inspected then. It would continue on to the next cycle, yes.
And then you still have in the ordinances, if there's, it's not just biannual, if there's any kind of problems or complaints, at that time you will do an inspection as well.
Correct. Based on any complaints, the properties will be inspected. Based on the property transfer, also the property will be inspected.
And this was intended really to be a summarization of what we've been talking about the last few months. I think we've been going down this road, and at this point we're prepared, and you've already authorized the advertisement of an ordinance, but we thought it was a good idea to just lay it out one more time to make sure we're going in the right direction. So this will be advertised and ready to approve with your vote at the June meeting.
Any questions? Others? You feel pretty confident that we have all the rental units in town?
At this point in time, 5,411 have been identified. I'm sure there's probably a few that we've missed, we'll catch. And out of that number, there may be some that are not technically rental units. But that will be for the property owners and us to be able to discuss once we send out notice to them.
Thank you, Keith. The next topic I want to touch on was relating to the Better Landlord program that's been mentioned over the past few months. We've been reviewing and continue to review the program in other cities and other municipalities in the United States. And we want to continue to do that prior to making any recommendations. One of the issues is there are no, I shouldn't say issues, but one of our concerns as we work on this, there are no municipalities in Pennsylvania that have used the ordinance, and we're concerned about dealing with legal challenges. We're investigating the legal challenges that have occurred in other states. We intend to also, Mr. Place has pointed out to me that he plans to establish a focus group of property owners and property managers to look at the fees that would be assessed if we moved in this direction. We believe that in the long run, many, if not most, property owners, if we had the program in place today, would opt to pay the higher fee rather than engage in the training. So we don't want to put something in place that really is a waste of everybody's effort. So we continue on that, and we'll report more at a later time. When you look at the Better Landlord Program and the study that was done, one thing that became very clear is that we need a stronger relationship between the borough and the property owners. Our Licensing and Inspections Department is currently working towards sponsoring a forum to help educate and support the landlords in regard to our ordinances and what can be done in partnership with the community. And we hope, Keith, we never talked about this, but I would expect that this will be at least be an annual event, if not more. Although the details are still being worked out with that, obviously from the partnership, we hope that somewhere along the line, the landlords in Pottstown create a landlord association and become more professionalized, but more to come on that. The last thing that I want to bring up in regard to rental properties, and this really applies not only to rental properties, but could be owner-occupied properties as well, is the discussion that we had last night, the presentation from Community Champions. After their presentation, you authorized staff to sit down and discuss the viability of moving forward and bringing their registration program to the borough. We've met, we've conversed with Community Champions, and we strongly believe that it is a good program, and we would ask council to authorize the solicitor to develop a new vacant property registration ordinance based on the model policy used in most other jurisdictions, with obviously some caveats that are absorbed from our current ordinance, so that they are successful in the efforts of that program. Once ready for adoption, we would then ask you to repeal the existing vacant property ordinance and replace it with the new ordinance. And the other thing I would ask you is to allow us to enter into a contract with Community Champions based on, obviously, the solicitor's review for the provision of third-party services to manage the vacant property registration program. Because Community Champions has been found to be a sole source provider and its professional assistance, we do not believe there's a need for an RFP. Pretty much be a waste of time because they'd be the only entity to provide a response. And the other thing, that it's not a cost to the borough. There's no budgetary implications in the sense that we don't pay a fee. They generate their funds from the fee that is paid by the registrant of the property at the time they register. And last but not least, I just want to point out, I know council's aware, we had the Blighted Property Summit at Connections on High several weeks ago. One of the topics in discussion was land banking. The county has indicated to us that they are, I take that back, the representatives of the county have indicated to us they're going to take it back to the commissioners with the suggestion that the county consider becoming the land bank and then dealing with the municipalities on an as-needed basis rather than us having to take on the responsibility of being the bank. The other thing I want to point out is one of the presentations, we had talked about this many times before, was ticketing through our Licensing and Inspections Department. And ticketing, I liken to the ticketing that's done in the police department, a parking ticket. It is not a criminal action. It is more a courtesy rather than filing a citation against someone they receive a parking ticket. The discussion that we've had, we really haven't gotten a lot of traction on it. However, one of the presentations during the summit was provided by the former director of codes in the city of Allentown, and he pointed out the value in the ticketing, and Mr. Place has had some discussions with him, has had some discussions with officials from Reading, and you'll hear more on the recommendation for going to a ticketing program here in the borough in the not too distant future. And that is the extent of the discussion, unless there's any questions in regard to what's happening in the licensing inspections right now.
So for Monday evening, you're asking us to move forward with a new vacant property ordinance for
Correct.
you guys. And the second thing is to work out an agreement with the Community's Care Program.
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion on those two items?
Community Champions.
Excuse me. Community Champions. Okay. Transportation, next.
Thank you. Council, as you know, we've been undergoing a large process for the acquisition of our purchase transportation provider. We went through that process. We received one bid from Part Inc. Part Inc. has been our provider for 35 plus years.
Here tonight are Charlie Dickinson, the Executive Director, and Jennifer Ridgway, Director of Operations. I have provided a technical evaluation to you. They provided us with a high-quality, impressive proposal to continue services within Borough and our greater region of our service area that we provide. The experience, the qualifications, the assets, and the transit maintenance area that everything that they provide will certainly take us into a stronger and a growing system. So if you have any questions for them, they're here tonight, but we are providing a recommendation to continue or actually initiate a new agreement for a 3-year contract, which is different. In years past, it was a year, a 3-year contract to move forward with transportation services for the Borough of Pottstown. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Even with the 3-year contract, we'd still have every year a approval of the budget, correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any questions? Okay, it'll be listed for Monday evening.
Okay, thank you.
Purchase of a fire truck. Oh, I'm sorry, Cobrookdale Railroad, tax exemption first.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Should have in your packet a request from Nathaniel Guest, the Executive Director of the Cobrookdale Railroad Trust, asking council to consider, as you should, I believe, are all aware, the county has determined them to be a nonprofit entity and given them nonprofit status. They had paid their taxes for 2014, and they currently have an outstanding tax bill for 2015. They're asking for consideration for reimbursement of the borough's portion of the taxes paid in 2014 and to be excused from paying their 2015 taxes. Obviously, Mr. Guest has to handle a request to the school district for that portion. And to my knowledge, I do not believe, Mr. Williams, that the school board has acted on that. And I do not believe that the county has acted on the request also. So strictly for the boroughs. And Janice, could you report on the values that he's asking to be excused and reimbursed?
Yes, the amount of taxes paid to the borough in 2014 was $2,712. But the property wasn't actually transferred to Cobrookdale until April, so it would be prorated. So the amount eligible for a refund for what was his in 2014 is $2,034. And then also,
And he has not paid this year's taxes, correct?
right, I was just going to say 2015 then is $2,465.
And he's already received from the county, though, starting next year, he'll receive, because it'll be a tax exempt property, but.
He's just trying to go backwards.
Right.
From the time you owned the property.
I think he had made this request last year, and at the time, council decided that it was premature to act on the taxes in any way because he hadn't obtained his tax exempt status. I understand the hearing was held earlier this year. He was awarded tax exempt status, so now is exempt from real estate taxes for all taxing bodies, but typically the Board of Assessment makes that prospective, so it really starts 2016, which is why you have the request for the prior years.
And he originally, the Cobrookdale Railroad is tax exempt from the beginning. They were nonprofit.
Yes.
It's just for this property.
For the land.
That he needed the exemption. And this is the old Davis Brothers property.
The address is 1410 Old Glass House.
Yeah. Thoughts, questions?
Just a question, I don't know if this really has anything to do with taxes or not, but that the property that, since he's getting tax exempt status, and it's not, he's not to do any kind of construction on the property because of what was there before.
Well, it disturbs the soil.
What happens if, I know that has nothing to do with tax exemption, but as far as that being basically a Superfund site, does that have anything to do with anything?
No, but I would suspect that if he did anything to the site that would violated any of the rules, DEP would be at him in a minute.
And that would have no effect on us whatsoever.
No.
I think, this is something that we have encouraged as another driver for economic development in the borough. They're operating on a shoestring to begin with. So I think really at this point, anything we can do to help and encourage them is worthwhile. And that, it's property that was never going to be used for anything useful to the borough anyway.
Or anyone, it was a liability.
Yeah. So I think, I applaud Nathaniel for the work that he's done, and I think that this is something that the borough really can possibly benefit down the road. And I just, to me, it's something it's worthwhile. It's an investment on our part, and I would encourage a positive response to this.
I would agree with Mr. Gary and add to that that the school district is taking the biggest hit. And I would defer to them, let them make the first move and we'll follow suit. I think they'll probably forego the tax.
Well, according to my inside sources, the school board or the school district has not responded to Nathaniel after numerous calls.
I think the water's fine, and I'm willing to be the first one in the pool. And
Yep.
if they decide they don't want to join us, then
Exactly.
I think
Same
it's...
way with the county.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Shame
force
on
their
them.
hands. Right.
We haven't been collecting taxes off that property for quite some time, have we? Because has it been in bankruptcy or, no?
No.
We've been collecting property taxes.
Yeah, I think the year, I think we're up to date on taxes, yes.
And unfortunately, I think when Nathaniel bought the property, he paid the taxes for the entire year, but, we can't forgive him when, for the taxes when the Davis brothers owned it from April before to January. So that's why it's not being, that portion's not being forgiven.
And if I recall correctly from the first time he was here and brought this to our attention, he probably could have applied for tax exempt status earlier and just, was so involved in
He missed the
everything
window,
else.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're a nonprofit and you're applying for a nonprofit on a property, it's almost a guarantee you're going to get it, All right, it'll be listed for Monday evening. Now we're up to the fire truck.
As council is aware, there's a request to consider the purchase of a new fire truck to replace the existing ladder truck that the borough owns, which we've been assured will not pass inspection this year. It also, in this day and age, wouldn't even be possible to purchase a vehicle of that type because of the safety issues involved in open cab vehicles. Nonetheless, before you, and I won't belabor the issue, I'll let Janice explain it, but before you is a analysis that was performed in regard to the methodology that we suggest in funding the fire truck. And with that, Janice, if you will, please.
On the left-hand side of the document there, it's showing your current millage and the current debt service. And then on the right-hand side is the proposed 2016, a little bit rearranging of the millage.
The preliminary proposed.
Preliminary proposed 2016. I keep forgetting that word. Which shows the Fund 14 would carry the proposed lease payment for finishing the existing lease we have, which goes to 2017, and then incorporating the new lease, which will go to 2025, with annual payments of $105,000. That's estimated. The proposal we were given by Community Leasing did have a 30-day limit on it, which we're past that, but he pretty much assured me that it wasn't going to change that much. So there's No increase to the tax millage.
So at the end of the day, we're able to fund it without increasing the tax millage. And it's important to note when Janice mentions leasing, it's a lease purchase.
Right, a lease purchase.
We're not leasing the fire truck. It's an actual acquisition through a lease purchase process.
When it's paid off in 2017, it's
We are the
ours.
owners.
Yeah.
And may I add, we just had this discussion in the Finance Committee, and the committee would like to recommend to council that we go forward with this.
Part of the cost of the fire truck is the full payment up front, which municipal, the KME, I should say, the builder of the fire truck gives us a $25,000 discount then when you put the funding up front.
Right.
So it's to our advantage to do that. Anybody have any questions?
Questions? Once again, too, as I explained on Monday evening, that, was it 68 or 62,000 we used to pay for the rental of the fire hydrants? That's been forgiven by the authority, so that's going towards to help pay for it. And some of those, what was brought up to us as being overages or reserves or surpluses.
Unexplained surplus.
Right. Those are all part of paying for the fire truck.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, that'll be listed for Monday evening. Resolution in support of the Pennsylvania libraries. This was brought to us by Mr. Green at the last meeting.
That's correct. Get to it here. Bear with me. Should be the next one. There we go. Yep. Thank you. You have, should have in your packets or online a resolution in support of the priorities and a recommendation for the Pennsylvania libraries that were issued by the Governor's Advisory Council on Library Development. Mr. Green, as you recall, spoke to council, I believe, last month and asked that you support this resolution. So with that said, we would recommend that it be approved on Monday night.
Any questions? Okay, it'll be listed. Number 14, All-American Soapbox on June 20th.
June 20th, the MBUCs have requested the closure of the Wilson Street Hill once again for the purpose of conducting their Soapbox Derby. As council is well aware, that is an event that is well attended, brings a lot of attention to Pottstown, and you may recall last year that the MBUCs were able to assist us in paving a portion of Wilson Street so that the race could continue to be run there. And the next item, if you want me to drop right into that.
Oh, any questions? Okay.
The next item, likewise on June 27th, the MBUCs are asking for the closure of Wilson Street to occur again for the purpose of running their Derby Challenge race.
Any questions on these? Okay, it'll be listed. Number 16, Manhole Rehab Bid Award. I guess, Doug, is that you?
We had one bidder, and they come in probably about twice as high as it was last year, so we're recommending to reject it, and then we'll look and see whether, I think we got out a little early this time, and apparently most everybody's got work already lined up, so maybe if we delay them a month or two, maybe we'll have better results.
Was it the same bidder as last year?
No, well, the company that's doing our water sewer project was the only bidder.
Okay, so that'll be listed to reject. 17, Padilla appointment. Sheila.
Yes, Tom Eccleston, our Hill representative, has been traveling too much lately. So he had recommended Bill Robertson from the Hill to join us. We have met with him. He's been to our meetings. We'd like to highly recommend that he would replace Tom for the remainder of his term.
So we'll have to vote on, what I guess, do we have to vote on his resignation first?
No, the Padilla board would have
Okay.
done that. You'll just vote to appoint whoever you want to fill the term.
So that will be listed for Monday evening. Any questions? Okay, now we're up to the additions. First one being the continued service of Mr. Woglam to serve as our consolidation consultant. Discussion.
I do have some concerns. I had a phone conference with Mr. Moglam on March 27th, and he acquiesced to me that since this is my community, I have a personal knowledge of North End's positive relationship with the Phillies on scene and off scene, inclusive of group trainings and just their relationship overall, that it was a very positive one, a very good working relationship, that they were very culturally similar. And then following my assistance, that I would only support a reorganization effort no matter what that looked like, whether it was one company or a hybrid agreement. He suggested participation, a meeting with the Consolidated Committee and Council to give them some direction. And then on April 30th, I received an email from Dave Woglam that we all received, which included his personal thoughts, one of which were stating that the culture in the Phillies organization is significantly different than the other three companies. Now, in 1 month's time, from my conversation with him and my personal knowledge with these men and this company and my community, he's giving a very different opinion that makes me feel that anything that would go forward that he's not objective on. And also at this time, if Goodwill and Empire are willing to open their door for conversation with the Phillies and North End plan, which Goodwill stated that they were not, and Empire said that they had to take that back to their company, that I don't know that a consolidation of companies is going to happen in the form that you were looking at as one umbrella. So therefore, we have Chief Langle has 56 years of experience that could answer any questions or offer any guidance to any of the companies that needed advice or help. We have a solicitor who's very experienced in drawing up any agreements that they would come to. Is it necessary to continue paying for consultant services?
So your recommendation would be to have Chief Langle take over as the borough representative?
Yes.
I reluctantly agree that we're probably to the point where Mr. Wogham's services are not going to be beneficial to the borough anymore in the consolidation process. I don't believe that is because of any fault of his. I think he has done a yeoman's job of carrying out the duties that we asked him to carry out. I think throughout the process it's become clear that not everybody was bargaining in good faith when it came to the Consolidation Committee, and I just want to make it absolutely clear that I in no way blame Mr. Wogham for that. I met him for the first time when he was brought in to help us search for a new borough manager. My only interaction with him has been purely professional. So I don't have a dog in the fight whether he stays as our consultant or not. But I think there's been a lot of accusations thrown around that could tarnish his reputation, and I'd hate to see that happen. But because of where we've gotten to in the process, I think his usefulness has probably come to an end. I would object strenuously to having Chief Langle be our go-between. I think that puts him in an untenable position, where as our fire chief, he's sort of got, I don't want to say dual loyalties, but a dual role where, he needs to answer to council, but yet he needs to take charge on the scene. And I think putting him in a position where he's going to be kind of caught between the two, I think it's unfair to him, and I would oppose making him our go-between.
Would he be interested in that position? Have you talked to him, Cheryl? Councilman.
I was just thinking for guidance and questions, not actually facilitating any type of consolidation. Just if the men were just asking for opinions on how consolidations, because Chief Langell has a lot of research that he did about consolidations and mergers in many different areas that nobody has tapped into any of that.
With all due respect, this is what Mr. Walgum does for a living, and they didn't want to listen to his recommendations. So I just think that's the wrong role for the chief, and that's not a dig on the chief. I agree with you; he's got a lot of experience. I just think it would be very unfair to put him in a position like that.
I know. Just one of the conversations, Mr. Gurry, that I did have with Chief Langell was the mergers and the consolidations that he looked at were very different than the road that was going, that consolidated committee was going down. So, I mean, he could offer some insight that may be information that nobody had before.
Well, we got two issues here. The first is the continued service of Dave Waldman. That's the first issue. The second thing would be who our borough manager would want to have be the liaison for the borough. But I will let you know this, that Mr. Waldman was in touch with Chief Langell weekly a lot. So it wasn't like he didn't rely on the man for information, because no one has more history on the fire companies than Mr. Langell, other than Mr. Kraus. So it wasn't like he was kept out of the loop. So for Monday evening, we'll have that listed as whether to continue, and I agree. I think at this point, I think, Mr. Waldman, I don't think he's going to go any farther. He's at, unfortunately has reached an impasse that even an impartial participant could not overcome. And, quite frankly, I think at the end of the year, we're going to be just where we're at right now and where we have been for the past 17 years that I've been on this council. So
well, I would
the
definitely,
council's,
yeah, I would definitely disagree
predict,
with that, Mr. Gurney,
just like the
because-
closed loop project that has been ongoing, this will be a concern of councils decades from now. And we're going to have a fire department that has not been sustainable. Even the solicitor for the Phillies has said, or their attorney, it's something that we need to fix. And we're just not getting there.
And I want to echo that point and disagree with you on one minor point. We're not going to be in the same position decades from now because everyone has agreed that the current system is not sustainable.
And we still did agree to look at whether it's feasible or not, or sustainable or not, and look at everything at the possibility of what it would look like having our drivers as borough employees. And I also disagree with you what would be like next year, because North End and Phillies are already committed to working with one another as far as debt, as far as fundraising, as far as recruitment and retainment of volunteers, as far as education in our school systems. So they have a lot of great ideas and a lot of great programs that they're going to be bringing forth. And this will not look next year like it looks today.
Well, at the end of the day, they still have to have a fire service agreement with the borough.
Sure.
And I don't see things changing. If you remember, the Phillies wanted no change, and they're getting what they wanted.
There is going to be change.
Well, we'll see. That'll be listed for Monday. The second thing is the rescinding of the funding letter. Mr. Wien, we discussed this in finance, and you said you want to set it.
We did, and I would agree to rescinding that letter and granting an additional 90 days to show us some progress.
And I guess I would just
take that approach.
The terminology I think we're looking at is the letter you had sent initially was basically indicating that the present fire service agreements would terminate June 30th, that
Correct.
they'd be no longer in effect. So your motion, or whatever you decide to do, would be to extend the existing fire service agreements
90 more days.
to whatever date you choose.
Monday night, showed to me that there is some progress being made. Maybe not on the original concept, but hopefully on a concept or an approach that's agreeable to all.
So we'll be up to
So-
October 30th.
Well, I would just like to add, because part of that letter was saying, and I want that wording removed, that they will be decertified to fight fires at the end of that 90 days.
I'm opposed, I mean, I understand that's subject to a vote, but that letter is out there, and I'm opposed because we wouldn't be nearly where we're at now if we weren't holding their feet to the fire. So the fact that North End and Phillies are talking is because we're driving this. And I don't want to relieve that pressure. We need to fix the system that we have now. And we can always reassess as we get closer, as we're doing now.
All right, well, I just don't want to get in a situation, Mr. Geary, in 90 days, that if we have two companies that have come to an agreement and the other two companies do not want to now, open communications with these two companies, that this just doesn't continue to drag on forever, that we make the agreement with the fire services to continue to protect and serve our borough.
And, I mean, no one up here has ever suggested we would ever be in a position where we did not have adequate fire services to protect the borough, ever.
I'm referring
And
to the decertification.
we have all been driven by the desire and the need and the recognition to have adequate fire protective services for the borough all the time.
Well, however, sending a letter to decertify any company that was not willing to participate in a consolidation is just inappropriate to me. I understand that you would like them to work things out and have 90 days. I don't like the fact that that's being held on them. These men have been dedicated, all of those four car companies
So
have been
you would
dedicated.
prefer that they drive the borough and we just extend this negotiation for another 5 years?
Didn't the borough say in the very beginning that it was up to the fire departments of what they wanted to do? Why would the borough be driving the bus?
Because we are funding. We're the funding source.
Right, but your funding's not changing. Your funding's not changing. Your contribution's not changing to them.
Well, it would be as if they're not going to be certified, and we don't have a fire service agreement with them.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying,
So that's our driving force, is the funding.
I just can't believe that you would
I'm
send
pleased.
them.
I have seen progress as of Monday night, and I'm willing to have faith in them for another 90 days, that they'll continue that. And that will be my vote Monday night.
And it will be September 30th, not October 30th.
Right.
Because June 30th was the deadline, so.
So currently, the vote is to extend all four
The motion.
fire services agreements
For another
90 days.
90 days, which
as-
would be September 30th.
And the effect of that would allow all of the existing companies to continue to provide fire service protection to the borough, so there's no issue of decertifying anyone. Everyone's still able to operate, and they're recognized by the borough as companies to fight fires.
Any other discussion?
Just with the safety and the ISO rating, is there a minimum quantifiable standard, like how the fire companies are organized that hinges upon those things, specifically the ISO rating?
Chief Langel's not here, and he would be the one to answer that. So
The chief and I have had that discussion, and frankly, ISO, so council's aware, ISO was actually in Pottstown last week performing our next evaluation. But with that said, they're looking more at response times, response capabilities, training, as far as how the department is structured, is not really what they look at. They look at what the department can deliver.
So
at
it's
the time
not
the
a
bell rings.
factor. in the consolidation. I mean, the consolidation plus or minus does not change the outcome of the ISO rating, which is an indicator for us as a borough.
Is provided the consolidation would deliver the services in the methodology and that ISO expects.
But today, or last week, they are doing the process of evaluating based on the system now.
And they were made well aware of the fact there's a discussion of consolidation. I was not party to that, but third hand being told to me, I was told that they made it clear that given the response capabilities of the borough, as long as those response capabilities are not affected, it will not change the ISO.
Okay.
We're hoping it changes it in the proper direction regardless.
Any other questions? Well, losing the location of the Empire, certainly hasn't diminished it, so.
And just also, just for, like, I don't know, rhetorical comment, but the sustainability of the Phillies fiscally, in my conversations with them, notwithstanding Monday, because I was not able to come to that meeting, but they have a culture of investment. So is part of the consolidation that they would have to relinquish their building, which is theirs, and also the assets that they have, fastidiously accumulated that enable them to keep what they're doing afloat. Is that a part of this process, that they would have to relinquish their building and relinquish their assets?
It was initially what happened that kind of made the whole thing fall apart to begin with, because that's what the Consolidated Committee was asking of them. That has now since changed, since North End and the Phillies have found an agreement to be able to work together without relinquishing assets and property.
I don't think council ever made any stipulations how they come about to
No, they didn't. I was just answering the mayor's question.
Well, I just was trying to get the answer from
So
the
you were
borough
at the
manager.
consolidation meetings, and you know that
I was at many meetings, and I have a timeline that I can share
the
with you.
consolidation meetings?
The meeting that came from, well, there was actually two. One where the Consolidated Committee came forward here on March 4th, and
Right.
Kevin Yerger.
And the Phillies at that time had already withdrawn.
Well, Kevin Yerger was stating at that time, and it's in his writing, and we all have copies, what the three deal breakers were from the Phillies. The three deal breakers were, they would not vacate their building, they would not turn over their assets other than what was borough contribution, and the Goodwill Ambulance Company would not, they would be separating Goodwill Ambulance from the Goodwill Fire, so they would not be giving any property to the Consolidated Committee. That is in Kevin Yerger's own writing to us on March 4th.
But the Phillies had already withdrawn at that point.
Because of those stipulations.
Well, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We're at a point now, the Phillies won, Let's just admit it, the Phillies won.
I just want to make it clear, very clear, that we did not give those orders.
I was just answering the mayor's question.
I'm just asking the question because
Council never intervened in those negotiations.
But I want to address a point too. When you say, you've prefaced your question about the financial sustainability of the Phillies. When I talk about sustainability, and I think when we talked about sustainability within this process, we were not talking about the individual financial sustainability of each of the individual fire companies. I'm talking about, and I think when Mr. Walgram was doing the analysis, we're talking about the sustainability of our ability to fulfill our obligation to continue to provide adequate fire protection to the entire borough.
I understand. Thank you. But I'm talking about, this is like hinging on the concept of distributive wealth, okay? So if they have accumulated some assets that they would like to keep in their coffers, is it a real responsibility to impose on them to share it unilaterally?
I am
I
concerned.
realize that the whole overarching theme of sustainability is for delivering services, but then this is a nuance that I am questioning.
I am concerned with adequate fire protection provided to every square foot within the limits of the Pottstown Borough.
So am I.
And right now, we provide $1 million of taxpayer money to make that happen. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we are giving that out appropriately.
I understand. I'm just asking the question on that particular nuance, not in subjugation of safety.
Okay, the next item, different venue for the Elks Beer Garden.
We received a letter from Mr. Hennessy, who you will recall spoke last month and provided council with a synopsis of their desire to close High Street for a beer garden. Believe it was originally stated as Sunday, October the 4th from 12 to 5. They have since done some more evaluation and determined that it makes more sense to them, after witnessing the powwow this weekend, to move that event to the island at Park because the river basically creates a barrier to give them better control of the inflow of people so they can control underage issues and whatnot. With that said, they would like permission to occupy the island, and they're saying Friday through Monday, over the term of this period, Friday to set up, Monday to tear down, and their event on Saturday and Sunday, their beer garden, or their beer festival, excuse me. I believe when we get done talking to them before next Monday, the suggestion is going to be, since they're done at 4 o'clock on Sunday, there's really no reason to hold occupancy on the property. We had our Parks and Recreation do an evaluation of the costs. It would be $300 plus $35 for each electric hookup for the vendors. We would not recommend the waiving of the fees. However, Parks and Recreation said they would offer a discount of $100 off of the rental fee to take it to $200, but the $35 electrical hookup for that time period, I don't think the taxpayer should be bearing the cost of that electric usage. So with that said, if council will consider entertaining that, I will get the definite dates of closure of the island for you for Monday night. And hopefully Mr. Hennessy will be here to explain his desires better.
Okay, that'll be listed for Monday evening. Next item is a vote on the CARES project. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been voted on and
This is a
seconded.
conditional use,
Right.
correct? So, for purposes of minutes, motion to grant the conditional use request of Pottstown Cares to create a mural at 427 Chestnut Street, with the mural being conformant to the testimony and exhibits presented at the hearing this evening.
Any questions by council? Since this is a voting item, anyone from the audience like to speak on this? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, vote on the lease amendment for 152 East High Street. Could I have that motion?
Moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions by council? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Comments from citizens present.
There are no citizens signed up for comment, Mr. Tironi.
Anyone here that would miss the comment would like to speak? Yes.
I would like you to
Need you to sign in, ma'am.
be more clear on the parking situation for that Hanover Square. With that presentation, that gentleman. Make sure that there's really adequate parking.
Well, they'll have to follow our ordinances to make,
Yeah.
especially our new
Crossing
ordinances.
Hanover Street is not a state thing, if that's what I was hearing.
Well, they wouldn't be parking across the street.
Okay.
Originally, that was the proposal,
That was the original, what they wanted to do was.
because he needed that amount of parking for that area.
And if they're putting the apartments over there, Most places want, two parking spots per unit.
Diane, we actually just updated and passed that new parking ordinance.
Good, good.
So they would have to follow our new
The new,
requirements.
the new one. That was what I meant. The new one.
That was your question?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
just the parking. I thought it was very unclear what they were saying about parking in the units. And
It's just a preliminary
since
proposal.
we,
Yeah, they haven't presented even any,
no, that wasn't
the drawing. It has to go before planning commission. Counselors, discussion. Counselor Kirkland.
A regional prayer revival, joined with hundreds of Christians. I understand it's not for Christians only, it's for any denomination or any religion. United under the banner of Christ, praying, gathering, Friday, May 8th, 7 p.m. at the Sunnybrook Ballroom. That's it. Friday, May 8th, 7 p.m.
Counselor Gary? No. Counselor Wynn?
Yes, this morning I had the good fortune of being in Norristown at the courthouse when our chief of police and mayor were honored and thanked by the county sheriff's department for donating bicycles so that they could have a bicycle patrol team as we do. Good job.
Thank you. Counselor Roxall?
I just want to express my regret that I had to work all weekend and I missed all the great things happening in town. It's particularly the powwow and the goat races. Maybe next year I'll have more time.
Counselor Cole?
I was at the powwow, I was at the car show, and at the goat races. What a weekend. It was really great, really great. And another thing I'd like to bring up is, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but the Achenbach building, is that how you pronounce it? They're renovating the outside of it.
Painting
It's
it.
really, really looking nice, very nice. And I know they're doing a lot of renovations inside also.
Counselor Miller?
I have a couple things. One, Mr. Attorney, I do want to refute something that you said on Monday night, that you stated that you were the only counselor that was trying to save all 4 fire companies. On February 9th, Mr. Kirkland and myself voted no to the solicitor to advertise a change to the borough ordinance and fire service agreements. I cited at that time it was not inclusive of the Phillies Fire Department, and it was very important to have all 4 fire companies in the participation because they all bring something unique to the table.
How was
Also,
that a new idea?
because on Monday night, you had said that you were the only counselor.
Came up with a new idea as far as keeping the Phillies in, and it was in response to the email that I sent out, and you said you responded positively. I have the email.
Yeah, I said it was a great starting point.
I have your email here, and I'll read it verbatim, which you said to
I
me.
have the email, that's what we
Well,
talked
you
about
read it.
Monday.
You
I
read
said
to
it
me.
was a great start. And then
Your response to me, Counselor Miller, was that would these were your questions. There was no.
Oh yeah, I had questions for the solicitor too, separate of
It
that.
said, where would the 3 drivers that currently drive for the Phillies be housed?
Mhm.
That's your first question. Where is the new fire truck going to be housed?
Mhm.
Does the Chestnut Street building remain tax exempt and the building expenses, upkeep, repairs, utilities be the only expenses the Phillies would be responsible for? Are they guaranteed an ongoing fire service agreement? These are the first questions that come to my mind. Many questions may follow. But nowhere in here did you say, I love your idea, let's move with it.
Well, we weren't going to move with it because it was a starting point for discussion.
But I said Monday evening, or on Monday evening, I said no counselor responded back to me, and you said, you were adamant when you said, I responded back positively that I liked the concept.
I said it was a great starting point.
Where is that? That's nowhere in here.
I'll pull my email for
Well,
you
you
because
pull
I
it out.
also have the chain, Mr. Troney, but I have it with me, so I will after.
But the question I
after
have
the
for you
completion.
with these questions, where in here is public safety for the citizens? All you're concerned about is the Phillies. where is the idea that my concept of bringing the Phillies back in, where is your concern for the citizens of our community?
Of having all 4 fire companies participate in fire
That
services?
wasn't your response to me.
They were questions based on your idea, or your idea that you got from an anonymous
Concept.
person
My concept.
that you received anonymously. Okay, that being said, with all the turmoil that goes on with the fire departments, and we forget what's important, and I want to thank Chad Quinter of the Phillies Fire Company and Mark Gibson of the Empire Fire Company for saving a life on 2nd Street on Friday. A human life and furry lives.
The fire chief usually recognizes them. I think it's in February. So
I'm sure that he will, but I want to say a
that's
personal
Joint Fire
thank you.
Prevention Week.
Yeah, because it was my ward, and I'm very grateful that they were there, and they worked together, and fire services do continue safely in this borough, despite turmoil.
So if you could forward with me that email chain that says that you were in favor or you thought the concept was good, I would appreciate it.
I said it was a great starting point, and I'll give it to you tonight.
I'd love to see it.
I have it, Mr. Attorney, I will give it to you. I would also like to mention that the family on 2nd Street, they lost everything. They lost all their belongings. They also lost some beloved pets. They have a GoFundMe site set up that people can make contributions to. It's a GoFundMe on Facebook. You can find it on our Pottstown Petstown page. You can find it on the Pottstown Mercury. You can find it on Cheryl Miller, Pottstown Borough Council. Or you can contact Jean Clark at her place of business at Valley Forge Animal Medical Center in Phoenixville. Any contributions, I'm sure, would be greatly appreciated. It takes a lot to start over. Our pet fair is next Saturday, the 16th, 9 to 3, Smith Family Plaza. We have 15 vendors. The Affordable Spay and Neuter Clinic will be doing vaccinations from 9 to 12. Sister Millicent will be here the entire day doing blessings of the animals. And lastly, the pet fair committee is dedicated to an animal-friendly community, and we have launched a website, Pottstown Petstown. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. You can find it on Facebook.
Mayor?
First, I'd like to just commend the staff for the excellent lease purchase and no increase in the millage or taxes for the purchase. I think that is very commendable and something that should be heralded on television, as well as the holding the line for the past couple of years by the borough manager with the borough taxes as well. And Mr. Gary for being willing to take the lead on alleviating the tax issue with the Colebrookdale Rail Line, given their reluctance on other parties. So that also is good. That the driver's seat does have to be discreet and distinct at times. So thank you for bringing that forward. And also, I got to take a picture with Jerry Blavitt at the concert at Sunnybrook on Saturday. So I did go to the car show at Well, but that was exciting. You remember listening to him a long time ago? WFIF, the Geeter with the Heater. Yeah.
Does he always wear his hat, or doesn't
He did not have a hat on.
Does he have hair?
Yes. And as soon as he started talking, everybody started dancing. The whole thing with the fire companies and the consolidation, my concern is way in the backdrop is still the looming issue of decades about the paid driver situation and the unionization thereof, and that would be a crushing blow to this community, and that is part of the reason for any allays that would delay a crushing capacity of paid driver unionization that the community could not handle would definitely be egregious. It really would. So as much as turmoil that there is and disagreement and whatever, I believe that the fire companies want to be in on that, And that needs to be also recognized, and that's probably a good reason for Chief Lingle to not be in the discussion, because, you know, that is a part and parcel to it, somewhere in the tertiary layers. So that was all I wanted to say. And good that businesses are looking, and the LERTA is a possibility. Just that, you know, when you have something with an objective criteria, it's kind of hard going in. You're not really knowing, you know, if you're in or you're out until the process is over. So that objectivity is a little bit uneasy to me, but obviously it's something that does work, so that's where we're at. We have to try things that work until they're proven as successful. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? We are adjourned.